Hey, welcome back to Boss Talk 843 Reacts, the place where you're going to get the best dang reaction every single dang time. And today we're going to be talking about race in America. And we have a couple of videos of people expressing certain situations they've been in where race became a factor. And we're going to try to get to the bottom of this so we can at least expose that there is a race agenda in America, and race does exist in America, and racial differences do exist in America. So let's get to these videos and I'll be back with my opinion, all right? Yeah.
As a white passing mixed person, I hear racist stuff all the time. It's time to expose. Alright, so one time I was with this group of white people, and the girls were talking about this girl who had jungle fever. And this white girl goes, "Isn't it a shame to see our race mixing with another? What's going to happen to our white purity?" I couldn't believe what I just heard. There was another time where I was at a party, and the only other black person there left early. Right after he left, one of the white dudes there proceeded to say the N-word. Not even in a song or anything, just said it out loud. When I confronted him about it, he said, "What? He's not here anymore." Little did he know that I'm a double agent. Needless to say, that situation was handled. There was another time where we were talking about an opposing basketball team. We were talking about why the team was so good, and somebody goes, "They're only good because they let all the charity cases on the team." There were no white people on this team. I'm sure I'm not the only white passing person with these kinds of stories, so feel free to duet.
The samples, it's like Costco, samples. So somebody took a sample. I know I don't spank, but I am on my child like a hawk. So when he is in the wrong, I'm like, you was wrong. This time, he didn't do it. And this woman, who was a non-person of color, behind her little desk, just started going in on Andrew. Just went it. I don't know why he took it. And he didn't have to use a napkin. And I was like, he didn't touch your little funky things, whatever it is that you, he didn't touch it. And I knew, I said, you know, I'm not gonna, so we just walked away. And while she could hear me, I said to my son, I said, remember when I told you there were people who were gonna mistreat you because you're black? She's one of them.
Yes, yes.
That's what they look like.
This is
Yo,
exactly
guys.
what it's
Oh my
like
God,
to
wait,
be
this is like,
Asian
oh my God,
in
wait, look at the
America
camera.
being constantly
Oh my God.
harassed.
Hi.
Oh,
you guys American? Yeah.
I'm a douchebag too. You guys enjoy your corn dogs and being Karens. America, wow, wow, Donald Trump.
Keep going.
Room service, please. Look at me in that half of the big truck. Room Ford F-150. Yeah, fat cholesterol foods. Oh, cream cheese. I'm American. Wee. Freaking deeds, fam.
Yeah, man, everything's racist. Think about it. Your streets are named after prominent racists in your city, state, or throughout history. Washington, Jackson, Jefferson, Lee, all slaveholders, all racists. Your schools, elementary, middle, and high school, are named after prominent members of your community who are probably racists. Take mine, for example. My middle school was named after Forrest Comer White, a white supremacist who tried to commit murder-suicide by airplane, and our school mascot was a Confederate rebel. Even your institutions of higher learning have their roots in racism. Harvard, Yale, and Brigham Young University is named after racist Brigham Young, who tried to eradicate Native Americans by poisoning them. Traffic, racism. Instead of building highways in the most efficient ways, they ran them specifically through black and brown neighborhoods, and now we have traffic because of that. Seasonal allergies, racism. It's the beautification of the white parts of town with only male trees that continuously pop off pollen with no female trees to absorb them. That's why you have seasonal allergies. Racism. Tipping, racism. White store owners didn't want to pay black employees anything, so they said, if your service is good, leave it up to the customer to pay you, and that's how we got tipping. Student loans, racism. College used to be free. That is until black people started going to college, and then now you have to pay, and if you can't pay, you take out a student loan. The prohibition on cannabis, racism. You see, it used to be legal. That is until white people wanted to demonize Mexicans, so they renamed cannabis marijuana, spelled with an H, to sound like Tijuana, so they could justify the mistreatment of Mexican people. That Ford truck you drive? Racism. Henry Ford was so racist that Hitler had a picture of him at his desk. He was inspired by the efficiency of his assembly line and used that efficiency to efficiently kill more people. He also got the inspiration for his gas chambers from America's gassing and delousing of Mexican migrants at the border. Argentina is 96% white because of racism. Mexico is known as a mestizo country because of racism. And brown people all around the world are bleaching their skin because of racism's twin sister, colorism. Cancer rates in the South? Racism. You see, they like to build petrochemical plants near black and brown neighborhoods, thus giving us higher rates of cancer than those around us. Matter of fact, right here in Louisiana, Mossville, Louisiana, used to be a thriving black town founded by black people, but it was later bought out by a petrochemical plant and bulldozed. Racism. It affects every part of our daily lives, and until we acknowledge that, we can't change it, because we can't change what we refuse to acknowledge. And that's why racism continues to thrive in this country, because we've raised generations of people to be willfully ignorant of it.
Right here, buddy. Right here. Tell me what you were doing. Burning out, racing through my fucking neighborhood. Burning out, racing through my fucking neighborhood. I told you not to. Get out my face. I'm not.
When I first saw this video of two thugs abusing a 16-year-old child for driving through their neighborhood, I really got chills and tears in my eyes because it made me reflect on my experience of raising two sons in Marin County, a vastly majority white area in California. We use, in Marin County, they use Neighborhood. It's an app, a Neighborhood Watch app, where we talk about all sorts of things happening in the neighborhood, but the crime area is very, very popular. And people post anytime they see a black or brown person. I promise you that 99% of the posts are when there is a black or brown person in the neighborhood, because of course we're not expected to be seen there. We're not expected to be there. We're not expected to live there. And so everything from electrical workers to Comcast to all sorts of people who were cleaning homes, all sorts of support help had police called on them or were certainly accosted by neighbors. Because trust me, if they saw someone black or brown, it was going to go on the alert crime area of this Neighborhood app. And there were definitely a large group, and it grew larger and larger, of white males who, there would be white women, causing hysteria. Oh my goodness, we can't be safe anymore. I heard this. And then there would be these white males who would say, we're not going to let this happen. We're going to protect our property. If you see someone that doesn't look right, you follow them. You ask them questions. We're going to make sure we're going to work together and make sure our places stay safe. Well, of course, in my mind, all I'm thinking is Trayvon Martin. And I have two black sons who are quite tall. And really just black. Black is enough, according to this app and according to what the world has shown us, to make someone of suspicion. So I was just worried. So I had to take post pictures on the app of my sons and say, these are my sons. They're supposed to be here. We've lived here for over a decade. Please don't harm them. And so when people say, oh, people should come and as black people and live in these all white neighborhoods, I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but we got to be real about the cost. And the cost for me was constant fear. Mellody Hobson. She's so bad. I've been following her forever. One of the most powerful women in the world, and definitely one of the most powerful black women. She now has been named as the first black female NFL owner to ever exist. And, that's very exciting. But of course, it leads to our discussion about black people in majority white spaces. And Mellody, during one of her TED Talks, one I've listened to frequently, talks about how she had pulled together a meeting with some very high executives to help her friend Ford, who was about to be running to be a congressman. And she pulled together this meeting. When they showed up, the secretary assumed that Melody and Ford, or Hobson and Ford, were working for the catering company. They were the only black people, and they were escorted, and the secretary said to them, "Where are your uniforms?" And she talks about how, this issue of race and how, black people oftentimes face just the assumptions that they couldn't possibly be in certain roles. And that is one of the prices of when black people are in majority white spaces. We're oftentimes assumed to be in a position where we're serving people. We could be walking through Walmart, or we could be at a corporate job, and people assume that we're in a position that is subordinate to theirs, regardless of what their position is, because that is how the stereotype of black people has been pushed. And so we are constantly having to almost prove ourselves. So regardless of our positions, regardless of how much we worked, how hard we've worked, how many accomplishments we have, we're often placed in the position of having to explain that we have a right to be in certain places. We've heard many cases over the years where people have been at Ivy League schools, resting in the study hall, and they've actually had the police called on them to walking into apartment buildings, to just people simply trying to do their jobs and being questioned to even get on campus, whether it's particularly some of these big tech companies. And so the stress of always having to, although you've proven yourself by going to school or checking all the boxes, whatever has been asked of you, that you still are not seen as a person who belongs in a place, is really something that affects the self-esteem sometimes. Talk about imposter syndrome and the stress that comes with that when you are all constantly having to justify your presence in a place.
There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, in the colonies, the colonial elite, looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another, or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people, right? So ultimately the rich figure out they got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness, and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude, no more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well. Right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks, they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies, rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown.
As a white passing mixed person, I hear racist stuff all the time.
I swear, this video was honestly just made for me. So I live in upstate New York, and as I'm sure you've noticed, I look very white. I've got super light eyes. I was born with blonde hair, and my mustache is still very blonde. When I say I was born blonde, I mean blonde. You don't quite get it. Blonde. Same exact thing with my little brother. Look at him. Looks like Tweety Bird. This is our dad, and this is our mom. So I've heard stuff like this my entire life. But the worst one actually came at my job. So for the last 5 years, I've worked at 3 different gyms. And the worst of these, I won't say the name, was in Albany, New York. Now, my job was to get people in and get them to sign up for memberships. I was a salesman. One day, this older white lady comes in and sits in front of my desk. The standard procedure in sales, we ask what their job is so we can try to, upsell them on memberships. And she tells me she's a teacher in Albany School District. These are the race demographics for Albany School District. Feel free to pause it. Expresses to me that she hates her job because these kids don't listen, and that it's because black people don't take care of their kids. She thinks they should be sterilized. I ran out of time, but there is a part 2, trust me.
If for 10 years, blacks acted like Asians in all things relevant to both academic and economic success, starting at a young age forward, if black children attended school, now the truancy rate is 5 times higher for blacks and for whites, attended school at the same rate of Asians, studied at the same rate of Asians, did not have children out of wedlock, waited until they were married before having children, did not get involved in gangs, crimes, drugs. So they acted like Asians in all things. If after 10 years of that, we still saw the racial disparities that we do, then it is time to look for a structural inequality, to look for a ubiquitous racism explanation. But right now, when the behavioral disparities are so glaring and so obvious, it is woefully premature to say that what's going on here is implicit bias or explicit bias.
Because there's no such thing as white. White is whatever they want it to be in the moment.
That person is 100% correct. He gets it. And I'm surprised by how few Americans understand what whiteness is in America. It's not really about the color of your skin. It's about being accepted into mainstream American society so you can get those great jobs at law firms. You can get those great jobs at Fortune 500 companies. You can actually buy a house in a certain neighborhood. That's what whiteness is about. And for me and many others, despite the color of my skin, I'm provisionally white. I'm accepted into white society unless I'm not, because my Jewishness becomes more important than my quote-unquote whiteness. And that was true for my grandparents as well, who were very dark-skinned. We're part Mizrahi. White is whatever they want it to be in the moment.
In America, the origins of race go back to the system of slavery. Though we may believe that race is biological, a physical trait defined by our skin color, or hair texture, or the shape of our lips or nose, it is not. How we've come to call someone white or someone black was actually invented to help perpetuate the system of slavery, generate profit, and sustain white supremacy. And the laws that built the system were focused on controlling the sexual and reproductive lives of black women.
You know, I'll be 62 in April, and I'm old enough to remember actually attending a Klan rally. I live in Marietta, Georgia, but I went to school in LaGrange, Georgia. My first day in LaGrange, Georgia in 1986, I saw a Klan rally on the square and actually walked around and talked to some of the Klansmen. And of course, I'm sure they didn't know, what race I was. I guess they assumed I wasn't white. But, I've been accused of being Hawaiian or Hispanic or whatever when they try to throw me into a race bucket. But I'm old enough to remember a Klan rally. So when you talk about race in America, we're not talking about ancient history. Within my lifetime, the biracial marriage I'm in was illegal in Virginia, where I grew up. Folks, we have to start looking at ourselves to be better citizens and to be better people. Think about that as you go through your day. Be a better person.
White rage is not about visible violence, but white rage is subtle. It is corrosive. It operates through the state legislatures, through Congress, through the judiciary, through school boards. It cloaks itself in legalities. Because it's so quiet, it's so subtle, you don't see. And so I set out to blow graphite onto that fingerprint, to be able to trace white rage throughout time to 2016. And one of the things that became clear to me as I started thinking through how white rage works, it became clear to me that the presence of black people was not the trigger for white rage. It is the presence of black people with ambition. The presence of black people with drive. The presence of black people with aspirations. The presence of black people who achieve. It's the presence of black people who refuse to accept their subjugation. The presence of black people who demand their rights. That's the trigger for white rage. And this society has therefore punished black resilience and black resolve.
Hey, welcome back. And I tell you one thing that I've came to myself. I'm not in that race stuff no more. I'm not trying to get these people to understand anything that's going on when it comes to black people. Because when you got your belief system locked in, it's locked in, and it's very hard to break that system. So you're kicking a dead horse, you're beating a dead horse, you're stabbing a dead horse. It's just not gonna happen with some people. So you must understand that and move accordingly with yourself. You know, you need to find happiness within yourself. And if you don't like it here, like me and my family are doing, we are leaving. We're moving to Africa, Ghana, as a matter of fact. Because I no longer like it in America. I no longer like these zombies walking around, these same old mentalities, and nobody's gonna get it. Nobody will ever understand it. So why not try a new place, start over, and see how that goes for you. But when it comes to race, we know it does exist. We know people look at us a certain way, no matter what status you're at, no matter how much money you got, your title at your job. When you kind of look like me, you kind of look like other people that look like me, it's going to always be a problem. So remember that. And I want to thank you guys for joining me with this video. And I hope you enjoyed the clips I have for you. And remember, this is Boss Talk 843, and I'm going to give you the best dang reaction every single dang time. So tune back in for my next video, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And I appreciate you guys, and God bless, all right? Yeah.